What's up everybody, my name is Miles and this is the Make with Miles channel. Today we're going to be building a headphone stand as part of the Rockler-Bentwood Challenge. Let's go. I've had a problem for a while now, which is the fact I have no dedicated spot for my headphones. I've been meaning to make a stand for a while now, and the Rockler-Bentwood Challenge was a good opportunity to make one whilst trying a skill that was new to me. As you can see in my first sketches, this stand solves another problem, which is keeping track of my SD cards. The first thing I did was draw patterns for the profile shape of the curved piece. I then cut those out and it was time to start work on the forms. I traced the pattern onto some MDF, making sure to account for the thickness of the wood which will be pressed in the form. Next, I cut down the MDF with a jigsaw so it was a manageable size for the bandsaw. On the bandsaw, I cut close to the lines I had drawn, but still leaving some material so I could sand up to the line. After I had cut the shape out on the bandsaw, I sanded the curves up to the line on the belt sander. Make sure to always wear some sort of mask when you're working with MDF, because the particles are very fine. I cut out 2 more layers of each side of the form, but didn't sand up to the line. I routed the new pieces with a flush trim bit, which makes them identical to the original template I made before. After all of the layers of the form were cut, it was now time to glue and screw them together. While gluing all the layers together, it is important that all the edges are flush with one another. The last step to finishing the form was putting packing tape on their inside faces so the glue wouldn't stick to the MDF when everything was clamped up. It was now time to start the glue up. I used 6 different layers of walnut and maple veneer, which I had left over from an old project. When all the layers had been glued sufficiently, I put them in the form and started clamping it up. I used as many clamps as I could to get even pressure from all sides. When I unclamped it and took it out of the form, it wasn't looking too promising because the edges weren't evenly laminated and there were even some gaps. But after I'd cut the edges off on the bandsaw, everything was looking good. After cutting the curved piece on the bandsaw, the edges were still somewhat rough, so I took it to the belt sander. Now that the main bentwood piece was done, it was now time to make the base of the stand. I found a chunk of walnut and cut it to shape on the table saw. I then made a few curve cuts on the table saw which would allow me to organize my SD cards. After the slots were cut, I had to cut a dado in the back so the bentwood piece could sit flush. I now had to do some final shaping of the base, which I started by cutting the corners off on the bandsaw and then rounding them off on the disc sander. I thought it would look cool to have some brass accents in contrast to the dark wood, so I cut some short pieces of brass rod off on my metal bandsaw. After drilling 3 holes on the drill press, I pounded the brass accents in. What I didn't show you here is cutting the brass flush. In the end, I used a hacksaw to do this, which took quite a while. The next step is everyone's favorite step, which is sanding. After sanding, I mixed up some 5-minute epoxy and glued the 2 main pieces together with the help of some super glue. I sanded some square maple pieces to a half round, and I glued one of them to the seam where the base and the curvy part met, and the other one to the top to prevent my headphones from slipping off. The final step was applying finish. I ended up using a beeswax mineral oil polish for this piece, and I applied it with a cloth. After I was done applying the finish, this build was complete. This was a super fun project for me, and I hope you learned something from this video. I want to give a huge thanks to the guys from the Modern Maker podcast, as well as Rockler, who is sponsoring the Bent Wood Challenge. If you liked this video, you might like some of my others, and if you want to see more of what I'm up to, hit the subscribe button and follow me on Instagram. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.